but it didn't happen for us. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And I had 3 rounds of IVF and 2 rounds of IUI. And anyone who will have gone through that will know how difficult it is because it breaks you. 29 weeks and 4 days into my pregnancy, I said to my husband, I haven't felt much as moved today. They did a scan and they said, your cervix is 1 centimetre dilated. So your baby will come early, screaming in pain. The pain, Louisa, I will never forget that pain. And the hospital sent me home. So what is this pain? Our world was beautiful. They took him away. We didn't get to see him because he had to go to the special unit. But our son, and everyone was elated. And an hour later, the specialist came in and said that your son is gravely ill. And then in the operating theatre, I flatlined. 3 times my heart stopped. And people asked me, did you have an afterlife experience? Did you? As I felt this deep desire to go down into this sleep, but something pulling me out of this. My twin sister, who said to me, why don't you do something? And it's that turning pain into purpose. And so I founded the Vishaal Foundation. We have babies, and yet people don't want to speak their names.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Love, Life and Loss. So today I have Madhuri joining me. Would you please like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Firstly, Louisa, thank you so much for having me on your incredible podcast. My name is Madhuri, and I am the mother to 3 children, Vishaal and Rehna, who have sadly passed away, and my living son, Nihal. And I also work as an outreach coordinator for SANS Baby Pregnancy and Baby Loss Charity, and my remit is to support South Asian communities.
And thank you so much for the work that you do and for agreeing to come on here today. It's a privilege, and I'm actually really looking forward to hearing your story. So would you like to tell us your story from the beginning, whatever that looks like to you?
Yeah, gosh, let's go way back. So I am born and brought up Wembley girl, lived there all my life, youngest of 7 children, had a wonderful family, and I grew up on Bollywood films. And so I thought that, we'll get married and we'll have the 2.2, children and family, and, so I got married at 25, and at 27, we thought, okay, let's try. But it didn't happen for us. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And I had 3 rounds of IVF and 2 rounds of IUI. And anyone who will have gone through that will know how difficult it is. And, to the world, we show this brave face and everything is okay. But actually, each time I was told, yes, it's worked, and then it failed. And on the last time, I remember leaving the hospital and my husband walked this way and I walked this way, because it breaks you. It takes so much out of you as a person, and it takes so much out of your relationship. And then when that happened, we both realized this is not good and we have to just stop. And then lo and behold, we conceived naturally. And in 2003, we conceived naturally. And I remember it was a bank holiday when we found out. It was the Easter bank holiday. And we were both in shock, and we did a pregnancy test. And then I made my husband go out and get more pregnancy tests, and then more. And throughout the day, we actually did 11 pregnancy tests.
Oh gosh, wow. You disbelieved it that much?
Total disbelief, and couldn't take in that, is this real? And, and then everything started about, getting the checkups, et cetera, putting that and everything was as beautiful. The sickness was bad, but part and parcel, and you'll take anything for your child,
Yeah.
But every day that that child grew within, we just fell more and more in love. We named the baby Munches at that time, and we fell more and more in Munches and the world that we would soon be ours, the three of ours.
Mm.
And yeah, it was beautiful. And we started slowly buying a few bits, and the families were ecstatic, knowing, and friends, knowing what we've been through, they were all ecstatic. And then 29 weeks and 4 days into my pregnancy, I was at work and I came back. At work, you're busy, and, I came back, and at about 6, I said to my husband, I haven't felt Munches move today. And he was a very active baby, and I haven't felt him move. And my hands are really numb for some reason. So we phoned the hospital, and they said, what, just come in and have a check. And we went, and at about 11, they saw us, and they said, they did a scan, and they said, your cervix is 1 centimeter dilated. So your baby will come early, but it's not a problem. You've passed the difficult stage, and we're going to give you steroids for the baby's lungs. So that's, something that we'll do. And we'll show you the SCBU NICU unit. Everything was in place, so all was well. But they said, stay the night and we'll see how dilated you are tomorrow, because then we'll know sort of what the next steps are to take. So, it's your first pregnancy, and you just go word for word with whatever they're saying. And they made us feel really reassured. And we stayed. My husband said bye. He came back the next morning and he said, has anyone come to see you? And I said, no, not yet. So we waited, but it was now new staff. Everyone that was the day before, there wasn't those people, there wasn't those specialists. And so with that, the amazing care we'd had the day before had actually totally changed.
Oh.
And we waited to be seen. We waited to be seen, and we sort of very unsure walked over to the scanning unit. Oh, we were told we'd have a scan. We're really busy today, and there were. There were so many people. We're really busy. We'll call you. We'll call you. We went back to see the special care unit. We were waiting. In that time while we were waiting, a midwife came over, and I had started a conversation in the bed with the lady in the bed next to me, who had 2 children. And we were talking, and the midwife came over, and she said, we're doing a trial for something called Strep B. And would you like to, to be involved as an antibiotic? So we like, yeah, tell us a bit more, which she did. And we both said yes. But for some reason, she chose that lady and not me to have this. And I didn't make a fuss of it. I didn't know what it was. First pregnancy, like I say, I just left it. We waited. It was now maybe 4:45 so we were getting worried. The scanning unit was, we went, and scanning unit was closed. And we said, oh, we're meant to be being seen. And they said, oh, we're really sorry. The sonographer has gone now as well. But we'll try and do something. And they came and they did measure me, but from above. They didn't do an internal. And so they said, everything is fine. You can go home. And so, okay, we went home. And we got so many calls in the evening from family, friends. And you think you've made everyone worry. You feel like, oh, well, the hospital sent me home. Everything's okay. So why did I make a fuss, And the evening we had our meal, not a problem, went to sleep. Next day, my husband went to work at 6. At 6:15, suddenly in bed, I started screaming in pain. The pain, Louisa, I will never forget that pain. And the hospital sent me home. So what is this pain? I, in my naivety, thought this pain was, I was on strong iron tablets. I thought it was constipation. I kept trying to walk to the loo, but every time I was walking, I was gripping my stomach because I couldn't actually move. It was so bad. Nothing was happening. And then I came back. My husband hadn't slept 2 days. He's just gone to work. I didn't want to just sort of say, so no, you know. So I phoned my sister and she said, you know what, phone your other sister. She's just given birth 2 weeks ago. And this doesn't sound right to me. Phone her. I phoned my sister and she said, this doesn't sound, this to me, what you're describing is labor pains. Phone the hospital. I phoned the hospital and they said, get your husband to bring you in. I said, but he's at work. Can you send an ambulance? No, it'll be quicker for him to bring you in. So then I phoned him. He had to go to the car park, get his car, come in. By the time he's come to get me, I'm on the floor. I'm doubled over in pain. So he tries to take me down the steps, put me in the car. All is this precious time that is being lost. And that journey to the hospital is something, I think he must have had nearly 3 accidents because I was screaming. What we didn't know is that I had dilated silently from most probably from the time I was at hospital to at the time when I felt this pain. So I was totally dilated. And that was labor pains. But my son was breech. Had he not been breech, he would have come out at home. But he was breech. When we got to the hospital, lo and behold, they're there and they've got the wheelchair and they've put me and they've bought something that scans you at the bed. Why couldn't they have done that the day before? And they say, you know, you're totally, you know, you have to have an emergency cesarean. Your son is breech and you have to now have an emergency cesarean. So we did, and a little while later, we had our precious, beautiful son. And in our mind was, it's fine. He's had the steroids for his lungs. He's past the danger state. He's nearly 30 weeks. It's fine. And for 1 hour, our world was beautiful. They took him away. We didn't get to see him because he had to go to the special unit. So they took him straight away. But we had our son. And both our works, within that hour, flowers arrived and calls, and because my husband told the families and then his work and my work, and everyone was elated. And an hour later, the specialist came in and said that your son is gravely ill. And at this point, we don't know what's wrong, but he is not responding to us. And he is very ill and we have to do tests. And that's when the ground opens and you plummet so far down. You plummet so far down. And you're hearing the words, but your heartbeat is in your mind and it's crushing you and you can't take in what they're saying. You know, we all know that feeling, sadly, you know. And they said, we'll do tests, and if he, survives the night, it's positive. Now, I had lost a lot of blood, and so I was very unwell, hooked up to so many wires and things. So my husband went to see our son, and he came back with this little Polaroid picture of him. And he was I remember, so long in length, so slender, and so innocent. And he should have been in our arms, but he was just hooked up to so many tubes and things. And here was me on, in another ward, the same, and we couldn't reach each other. But I just needed to meet my son. And so my husband said she needs to see her child. So they let him take me in a wheelchair. And that was the first time we saw him. And then we waited that night. And that night was the longest night. I remember 1 in the morning saying to the nurse, "What time is it?" Because we wanted the night to pass to know, he'll be okay. It's 1, it's 2:30. The night was just not passing. And then the next morning, I said, "Can we see our son?" And they said, "You need to wait for the specialist. The specialist will come and you need to be here." So again, we couldn't see our son. The specialist came and they said that your son has strep B and that causes meningitis. And the kindest thing you can do for him is switch off his life support machine. And again, that thunder, that thunder. And we couldn't understand what is strep B, what is meningitis, what are all these things you're throwing at us. And they said, you make your mind, we'll give you a bit of time, make your mind up what you want to do. And we went back to them and said, why is it the kindest thing? Why can't you do anything? And I remember so vividly, they said, your baby is surviving on morphine for the pain. And that for me, Louisa, was switch it off. No child. How does a 1-year-old baby know pain? So that's when we made that decision. But we said we wanted all our family to come and see him and be able to cradle him. And they said, when we take him out of the incubator is the time that you have to do it. But we don't know when his heart will stop after that. So we called all the family and friends, and they were in this suite, and so the first time we got to hold our son, and we named him Vishaal, the first time we got to hold him was when they placed him in arms. And I remember both of us just kissing him, and trying, no matter what the doctors and the specialists said, we were trying to breathe life in him. We were saying, don't make them right, make them wrong. And in that few moments that we held him before we had to switch off the machine, we tried to breathe into him a lifetime of love. And all those milestones that you think of, day of coming home, first day of nursery, school, university, girlfriend, wedding, grandchild, all of these milestones, all these special birthdays, and all the occasions that we have, in our own cultures, all of these things, we tried to breathe everything in him. And we tried to breathe that lifetime of love that we were going to give him, that was his, that should have been his, before we switched off that machine. And then when we switched it off, we walked him into that room where all of the family and friends were waiting, and everyone got to hold him. And discreetly, the nurses were coming in and checking for a heartbeat. And that must have been at about 12:30 that we did this. And they kept coming in, and his heart was still beating. They could still detect a heartbeat. And then at about 4:30, they came in. And I don't know, I can't remember whose arms he was in, but it was arms of love. That's what I know. And that's when they said his heartbeat stopped. And then we had him with us for that night. And we played him, our favourite songs. And we just held him, my husband and I. And then the next day, who knows, when you lose a baby, you have to get a birth certificate before being able to get a death certificate. My poor husband had to go and do that. And they got that wrong. They gave him a death certificate of the day he was born and a birth certificate of the day he died, And he didn't have the heart to tell me that this has happened. But while he was gone, I just wanted my baby back.
Mm-hmm.
And I was screaming, give me my baby. And I was in this side room, but I could hear all the babies crying. And you can see the mothers, pregnant women walking past. And I was screaming. And I started clawing at my cesarean because I needed to get the pain that I was feeling out. I needed this tsunami that was hitting me. I needed to hit it back, you know. And my husband's sister-in-law, she tells me she walked in the ward and what she heard was me screaming. And she ran and she said to the nurses, do something, do something. And then they said that he would have changed so much by now that it will be worse for me to see him now. So then we went home and we started preparing for the funeral. And I'm a Hindu and we cremate. So for me, burial was a very alien concept. And again, you don't know these things until something happens. So in our culture, in our belief, if a baby passes, they are pure of soul and then they're buried. Didn't know that and didn't have the strength to fight it or to think further. It was too bereft. So I went with what the elders told me. And I remember when he was taken to the funeral home, we sat with him every day, every single day. And we got him ready on the morning of the funeral. And I carried his little casket in my arms, driving from there to the cemetery. And that is the first time in my life I've actually seen what 6 foot under means. I'd never seen that before. And that feeling of seeing that tiny coffin being placed 6 foot under was you in those days from loss to funeral, so much of you is chipped away, just chipped away. Your heart, your mind, your soul, your essence is just chipped away, chipped away. But you're so numb that the numbness and pain, you can't feel that extra chipping. You don't know what's happening. You're just void of everything. And in his coffin, we put a photo of the three of us, and everyone wrote letters. Such a small coffin, what can you put in, you know? But we all wrote letters, and we tried to send with him things for his journey. And in his hand, we put a little pound coin, and that was for his journey, you know. And we had a very little service. If I had my right mind, I would have had him cremated. If I had my right mind, I would have had the biggest funeral, the funeral that he deserved. And I wouldn't have said, oh no, so-and-so can't come and so-and-so can't come. I wouldn't have had at the graveside only me, my husband, the priest, and his brother, with my sisters having to look on from far. I wouldn't have allowed that. But because he was a baby, it was like, no, just do it, you know. I wouldn't have done all those things, but I was too bereft. The next day, my husband came in, and we had people sitting with us. My sister had come from America. My sisters were all around me. And he said, Mud, did you put this in the garden in the birdhouse? What is it? It was a £1 coin, very dirty £1 coin, full of mud. But it was a £1 coin. And I really believe in signs, Louisa. And I believe that was his way of saying, I've reached my destination. Don't worry. How else can he tell us? And I believe that was his way of saying, I'm here. And I guess when everyone leaves, that's when you really have to pick yourself off the ground. And you're in a hole, black hole that is so deep. And you try and claw out of it. Your hands are raw, full of blood and paining because you're trying to claw out, maybe not for you, but for others who want to see you as normal.
Mhm.
You know, you're happy to just sit in that, you know, but you're trying to claw out. And my moment was my husband, when he'd go to work, the one clothing that I had of Vishaal's that had a tiny bit of his blood on it, I used to wrap that in my arms and I would lay there. But before he came back, I quickly put everything away because I wanted him to be okay. And for him to be okay, I had to show that I was okay.
Yeah.
But I fell asleep. I fell asleep and he came home and he found me that way. And he was shocked. And he didn't know how to react. And so his reaction was to shout because, oh my God, what's happening to my wife? He didn't, the reality of how bad things are hit him then. And then I realized I've got to come out of this for everyone's sake. I've got to. And then it was my sister, my twin sister, who said to me, why don't you do something? And it's that turning pain into purpose. And so I founded the Vishaal Foundation, which is just an organization that brings families together to honor and remember their babies, because we have babies and yet people don't want to speak their names.
Mm.
It's like, okay, let's just sweep that under the carpet. Let's not say that name because one, it might hurt them, and we don't want to give them more pain. Or secondly, as is in my culture a lot, it's God's will and you need to move on and you'll have another, and at least he wasn't fully formed and at least he wasn't this many years, and at least the at least and the
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
What they don't realize is they're compounding your grief by not saying his name,
Yeah.
because you want to speak about that baby till the cows come home
Mhm.
and come home again and again. You want to keep talking about that baby. So through the Vishaal Foundation, I enabled parents to speak about their babies, and they came together in a place where they didn't have to explain.
Mhm.
They just could be. But strangely enough, the when I lost and I was off, my work were really good, and they gave me my full maternity and everything, and as they should. But I looked onto the internet. Where do I turn for support? I was drowning and I needed that support, and I turned to Sans. And I remember screaming down the phone, screaming. And I've taken calls from the helpline, but I've never heard what I heard in my own. I didn't know how to cope. And I was crying in pain. I was crying. And they really supported me. And I went to a support group, my husband and I did. And it was there that I looked around me and it was just us, the two Asian people, amongst this room of, we were the only people of color. And so in a way, actually, I felt more isolated. And I remember saying that, oh, we had brought clothes for my son. And the day before my mother-in-law came round, everyone came round, and she came with clothes for my son to be buried in. And so we put those clothes, and everyone was like, oh, God, that is terrible. And I felt, oh, God, why did I say anything? Why did I say anything? But we have that respect, and she's the matriarch of the family, and she's also hurting. And so, the clothes that we had brought, I sent with him, but we placed the clothes she brought on him. But nobody could understand that. And I didn't go back to a support meeting. But I went to Garden Day, and again, in these hundreds of people, it was just us of colour, nobody else. And while nobody may have been looking at me, I felt like I was in this glass house, you know. And I was thinking about other people must have looked, where are they? You know.
Yeah, yeah, you're not the only one.
After a year, I turned to Sans and I said, can I help you to build up on diversity and reach these people? And then I had to contact so and so and so and so and so and so. And then finally, in an email, very polite, go and knock on another door kind of email, thanks, but no thanks. And so I left it and I worked with the Vishaal Foundation. I did everything I could to support parents. And fate is a really strange thing. Well, actually, if I go back after losing Vishaal, 3 years later, we had my son now, my living son, who's now 20. And then 2 years after that, I conceived again, and all naturally, and I had a miscarriage. And the doctors then told me, we have to do this procedure. We have to do it on the 13th of November. That's the date we have. It was 5 years to the day of losing my son in the same hospital, 13th November. And I was like, bring it on. I was so angry. I was like, bring it on, bring it on. And once everything was done and I'd had my daughter, I went home and I started thinking about it. And I started thinking about Vishaal's and the signs that I believe in. And I thought that was his way of saying, Mom, I've got her. I've got my baby sister. And how can he tell me? So in his mind, yeah, that's the only way that he can tell me. And so fast forward, every year I want to do something special. And Vishaal was going to turn 18. And my friend, who was an ambassador for SANS, contacted me. And I'd helped her when she lost. And then she went on to become an ambassador. And she said, Madhuri, they really, really want to support people who are African, Caribbean, and South Asian. Can you have a chat with them? And so I said, okay. And it was clear, the new CEO, and it was Jen Coates, Director of Bereavement Support. And this was a very different SANS, I felt, to the people that say, no, thank you, on your way. And they really had a desire to make change. And so I told them about my experience, and they said, we're so sorry, you know. And Jen just happened to mention that, you know, we're so committed and we've just filled a position to support African and Caribbean communities, and we're doing the same thing with South Asian communities. Wonderful. We agreed to meet a month later. And that was a Friday. Friday, I used to be a ward councillor, so not Labour, not Conservative, independent ward councillor. So Friday evening, I logged on to see if any residents had emailed me. They hadn't, but Jen had. And she said, just to show you our commitment, this is the job that we have advertised. And I started screaming. And I called my husband and I called my son. I said, calm down, read this. And I had a really good job. I was very cushy. It was a good job, great pay. But I read this and I thought, oh my God. And job applications normally expire at 5 o'clock on a Friday. What I've seen, I could be wrong. This expired at midnight on the Sunday. Well, I cancelled everything and I spent 2 days applying for this job, and you had to do a presentation and all sorts. And I think like 2 minutes to midnight, I pressed the button and sent it off. And Monday, I emailed Jen and said, just to let you know. And she said, okay, thanks for letting me know. We will not have any more conversations now because, you know, and I got the job. Some things are just meant to be. And so it's not just me, it's the intention of all of SANS that makes it happen. But in the outreach role, so much change has been made. And 4 years on, you don't ever want to see parents. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see any parent lose a baby, but it happens. Sadly, it happens so much more in our communities where the inequalities are horrific.
Mm-hmm.
But we're trying to really, really raise and amplify the voices of parents because it's not right. And you will know, Louisa, that if from 2017 to 2021, a few short years, if babies from our communities, both our communities, had been given the same opportunities as white babies, 1,704 babies would not have died. 1,704. And you can't, every time I say it, I pause and I think it takes a village to raise a child. So you have quashed that village. You have, because of the inequalities, you've stripped everything away. And I mention inequalities because after Vishaal died, and I was able to, I knocked on the hospital doors so many times because I knew things had gone wrong. But it was just me, and my husband was, he couldn't go there. So it was just me going round and round. And why I did that is that Strep B, 13-pound antibiotic that was given to the other lady, had it been given to me, my son would have been here now. He would have been a 22-year-old boy. But that antibiotic that was that far from my grasp was not, I wasn't chosen for that. So for me, that's a huge inequality. Why? You know? So yeah, we're working really hard now on these inequalities, but we're also working really hard on, you know, why is it that baby loss should be a stigma and taboo? And I know our cultures are actually quite similar, and the way our families come together and the values and things. So I think this also speaks for African and Caribbean communities, but I know in South Asian communities it's very much so. And I think that's because womanhood and motherhood is so deeply entwined.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the mother's fault. It's you know, it's always, you have done this and you've done this. And the things that I've had to hear that women tell me that they have been made to hear is awful. And I think part of this is also intergenerational loss.
Yeah.
Because if I think, and my mother was a very caring one, but she came to this community, to England, and they had shops, they had groceries, and she was pregnant, and she was at the shop alone, she was serving, and she felt a trickle down her legs, and she looked, and that trickle was blood. So she locked the shop, she went to the toilet, she had to there and then give, you know, she lost the baby, and what could she do? You know, she cleaned herself up, she unlocked the door, and she started serving because they were the first generation and that's all they could do. And so I think they are so, well, we just have to get on.
Mm-hmm.
That became like a normality as well. So some play the blame game, which is totally wrong, and for others it's just like, okay, what do you do? You know, it's just become. And so now we have to, and both for Caribbean and African and then separately for South Asian communities, we have support groups, bi-weekly support groups, one in the day and one in the evening, where people can come and speak about the nuances of their cultures that nobody else will understand, like I had to face when I said about changing the clothes. So you can come there and share whatever you want, as much or as little as you want, knowing that you will not be judged, knowing that this is a safe and confidential space. And so, yeah, so much now, and even like imagery, it's
Mhm.
really important that we don't use stock images and that we use images of real parents. And for me to reach out, I know I would need to see images of mirror image of me reflected in, and so that's so important. So we try and make, you know, what may be a little thing seem like a little thing actually is a huge thing for a parent.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so we try and make those changes. And so I go back to that. I wouldn't want anyone to lose a baby. But now we see so many people from our cultures reaching out, but still not enough. There's still so much more work to do because there are so many people. But what we recognize is this is not about SANS or other baby loss organizations. It's about all of us together. And the work that I see on Insta with people like yourself and this podcast you're doing, it's not about that person or that. It's about us all coming together and joining hands. And that's how we can make proper change. That is how we can
Mhm.
support. And amen to that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what we need to do. And yeah, so I have lost my children, and it's really sad because I speak about Vishaal all the time, and Rehna, even I don't talk about her as much as I speak about Vishaal.
Mm.
And that's wrong of me because I'm telling people, say your baby's names. But it's been so much growed in me, I guess, that again, another, this happened to you again.
Mm.
You know, is there something wrong with you? You
Mhm.
know, and that's what we need to do. And so today, I say their names with so much love and pride. And Mother's Day, my son gave me a card, and it was signed all three of their names.
Oh, I love
And
that.
yeah, and for me, he is the generation that will carry on those names.
Mhm.
I don't want it to just end with me. And he is that generation. And he, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2024. And when I went to have the tumor removed, he came with me. And the hospital had already told me that you need to walk through the maternity unit to get to where the operation theatre is. And he said, Mom, I want to go to the hospital. And we had to be there at 7. So he and my husband came with me. And he said, What's that? And I said, That's the neonatal ward. He, you know, it's need to know, isn't it? Child doesn't know. And I said, That's where your brother was. And as I walked past, I did this to the door. I remember just with my hand gently sweeping the door. And then in the operating theatre, I flatlined 3 times. My heart stopped. And on the third time, they had to resuscitate me. And it took 3 minutes. And thankfully, they were able to resuscitate me. And people ask me, Did you have an afterlife experience? Did you see that,
Mm.
going through that time? I felt nothing like that, I'll be honest. But what I did feel is I felt this deep desire to go down into the sleep, but something pulling me out of the sleep. I felt that. And again, I know that it was him. I just know it was him. And when we walked out of that hospital some days later, my son and my husband, both sides on my ribs were cracked, so difficulty walking, and they were holding me up. And I stopped at that door and I just kissed it. I just kissed that door. So we are mothers. Doesn't matter if it's a year, 10 years, 22 years. They are our children.
Mhm.
And we love them. They will always be with us. And I love that, that chromosomes, they stay within us. That gives me so much peace knowing that my babies are a part of me. That gives me so much peace. And I just want to be able to continue this journey of supporting for as long as I can. And I know In my journey of science, I have heard that, oh, maybe they're not doing this right, and maybe they're not doing this right. And I know we have so much more to do, but hand on heart, I can say they're really trying. And hand on heart, I can say we've made such a difference in amplifying the parents' voice and giving them a place to come to in the inequalities that we're working with, in Parliament, in the Listening Project, in so many things, in the support groups and events, and everything we do. Everything is about that parent and amplifying those voices. And yeah, I'm just so grateful to be able to do what I do, because I think it's a calling. I think it's a
Mhm.
calling for you, for me,
Yeah.
and anyone that works in this arena. And it's our way of ensuring that their memory and that bright star that they are will always, always shine.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I 100% agree. And actually, what you say, you're grateful, but I'm grateful for people like you. We're all grateful for people like you. Sans wouldn't have come this far without people like you. So they can have all the great intentions and everything in the world, but without people like you, they wouldn't actually make traction. They wouldn't make changes in the way that they have. So I just want to say thank you, because you are amazing and you've got such a pure, soft energy about you. And that I think no matter what you look like, I think anybody could come and talk to you, to be honest with you, and feel at ease and feel listened to.
Thank
Uh,
you. And likewise, honestly, likewise. It's
thank you.
brilliant what you do, and thank you for giving so many people that voice. And when I spoke to you, you know, some people are on the screen and some people are behind it. And when I spoke to you, when we discussed this podcast, what stayed with me is you said, I'm meeting somebody to discuss papers and lawyers. And that takes a lot of energy. That
Mm,
takes a lot. And it takes, in every time that we are supporting, we're also, there's a part of us, that it brings it back, you know. And I guess we feel honored to do what we do, but I just want to acknowledge that that really stayed with me. It really stayed with me, and just thank you for all you do. And in Hinduism, this is our way of we say namaste, and this is our way of saying hello and bye bye. And what it means is, may the light within me forever honor the light within you. And so,
oh,
yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And so I hope through the work we can all doing, and for every parent that reaches out, may our light forever honor their light.
I love that. I love that. What is it? What is it? Did you say namaste?
Namaste.
Yeah,
Yes,
namaste.
yes,
I was just doing my yoga. This one, I always say yoga saved my life. So I often,
yes. And they say that in there,
mm,
namaste, and
yeah.
that's the meaning of it. I mean, the light with
Ah,
me forever honor the light with you. And I love that. I
me
think the way
too.
this world is going, it's so scary. It's so
Mm,
scary. And we are seeing inequalities in other ways as well now.
hmm.
And so we just all need to honor one each other. That's what it's about. That's what we need to learn.
I always tell my kids it's nice to be nice. Always choose kindness first.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just to me it makes sense. I don't understand why you wouldn't do that, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's not.
The
Everybody isn't.
world is, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I never realized. So you've done so much. Obviously, I know about your work with Sands, but I never knew you had your own foundation as well. Please tell us a little bit more about that. Are you still working with that? You still do that?
Yes, I do. But it's just events. So we do in Slough, we do something for the Wave of Light. And Louisa, it's so beautiful. So we're at Herschel Park, and there's a beautiful lake in the middle, and we provide lanterns for everyone, and pens, and a little tea lights. There's a choir. The whole park, the lake area, is lit up in blues
Oh,
and pinks. It's, if you can come this year, it's just, I cannot tell you how beautiful it is. And so we ask everyone to come at 6:30, and the choir is there ready, and everyone writes their personal messages on the lanterns. And then at 7 o'clock, there's a little drawbridge, the choir starts, and there's a queue of people waiting to place their lantern. And I'll share with you an image of, you see all of these lanterns in the lake together, and they represent a baby. Every
Oh,
single lantern represents a
beautiful.
baby. But what's really beautiful about it is, like, my mother-in-law, she passed away when she was 99. And my son was my husband was in his 50s, but he was still her baby.
Mm-hmm.
He was still her. That's what our children are. So slowly what happened at the Wave of Light is we noticed people who had lost a child to cancer come. And we thought, no problem. And then the next year, somebody who'd lost their child in a car accident came. Somebody who had mistaken identity and was killed in a pub,
Oh.
they came. And so we realized, yes, baby loss is something that we wouldn't want anyone to face, but your child is your child no matter what age. And so we just said, that's fine. Let anyone, that day is about everyone. And so, yeah, anyone comes. And so we do events, basically. We signpost. We don't offer support in that way. We signpost, but we do events that enable parents to come together. And what's really beautiful is my son has seen through his life me do this work, and he has spoken at my events with the Vishaal Foundation, and he's spoken at SANS, at events in SANS, and he speaks about sibling loss, which we don't often speak about.
Yeah.
And then last year I was invited on the Katie Piper program, which aired last August. And they said, bring somebody with you who knows you really well and knows your journey and knows the work you do. So I asked my son, would you come with me? And he did. He was 19 at the time, and he spoke so eloquently about his siblings and about the work I do and what sibling loss means to him. And I think it's so amazing to be able to pass this down to your children and for them to still be able to honor that loss. And, if I think about those chromosomes that are with me, and he's the second child, and sometimes I think that any of those chromosomes in him.
But they say, don't they? I
Yeah.
read a
Yeah.
study about it that because we absorb them,
Yeah.
any then pregnancy we have afterwards can absorb them. So the last baby will have every bit of everybody
Yes.
in
And
them.
I
And
think
I
that's
think that's magical.
beautiful.
I do. I
I
think
love
it's
it.
magical.
And this Mother's Day, something happened that I'd never thought of before. And again, I'll send you the image. Somebody sent me this image of what we presume heaven would be like. And it was these clouds, and it was these rocking chairs, and mothers held the babies in their arms in these rocking chairs. And they said that, babies that are lost too soon, when mothers go too soon and they leave their babies behind because they've gone, they are the custodials to those babies,
Oh.
to our babies. And they keep our babies rocked in their arms until we meet them again. And I just found that so beautiful.
Mm.
And just thought, and that was just this Mother's Day gone, and I just thought, wow, what a lovely way to think of it.
Madhuri, you made me so emotional in this interview. I never normally get emotional like this, but you really have, and that just touched me. And mine's a little bit different. I lost my dad when I was 6, so
Oh,
when my
gosh.
son passed away, he's buried with my dad
Oh,
because
that's amazing.
I couldn't I couldn't bear the thought of burying him in the baby part of the cemetery. To me, it was like a horror film. I just didn't like
Yeah.
it, and I didn't want him on his own. So my mum kindly offered to let him be
Mm,
buried with my dad. I know, and I never even thought of it, so I was so grateful for her. But that's
mm,
the image that I have is that my
mm.
dad has
That's
got
so nice.
he's looking after him.
You've just shared something so important, because it's only recently that I've been thinking, after me, who's going to go? Who's going to go and see my baby? Who's going to go? I go, I tidy up. Who's going to go? And my son says to me, oh, Mum, I will. But I don't want to give him such a huge responsibility. So I phoned the funeral directors, And I said that I will be cremated. And is it possible? First time I'm sharing this. Um, is it possible for my son, whatever is there, to be cremated with me?
Mm.
So in life, I couldn't have him with me, but in that final, yeah, I can. They said you have to write, you have to get your solicitor to write a letter to say these are your wishes. And then that letter, when that time comes, has to go to the Home Office. And then the Home Office then says yes or no. Why isn't their decision? But it is.
Mm.
And so then when they say yes, that is when your funeral can take place.
Okay.
And so I sat my son down and I said, Bidda, this is, Bidda means child. It's a term of endearment in our culture. And I said, Bidda, this is what I want to do. But you would need to be a big part of this because you would need to do that for me. And would you be able to? And he said, Mum, if that's your wish. And I said, my funeral may take place later. It may not be that week. It may be 3 weeks, depending. And he said, no, that's okay. It's okay if that's what you want. And so I've started that Wheels in Motion.
That's so lovely. I would never even have thought of something like that. It actually
Mm,
sounds beautiful. And I get it. 100% get it. I do. Oh,
yeah,
you're so thoughtful. You really are. Like, oh, I'm really I'm really pleased that you came on today. And
thank you. Thank you.
and I'd like to, if you can, just let people know. Actually, I wanted to ask you, actually, you mentioned earlier, did you say you had IVF and did you say IUI?
There you are,
What
yes.
is that? I've never heard of that before.
So IUI is not as evasive as IUF, IVF, I should say. IVF, you have to be put into menopause, you have to have all of these injections, etc. Whereas IUI, they basically bring together the they artificially inseminate you with the sperm,
Okay.
you know, and see if it works that way. We had 3 and that didn't work. The IVF did, but it didn't take. But yeah, IUI is kind of the first step, and mine was, many, like 27 years ago now when I started. The journey now has changed a lot,
Mm, yeah.
and I hope it's a bit more gentle on people. I hope it's more gentle. And now I'm glad that hospitals recognize, these people have been trying for so long. They need to have, that wasn't in my day. How we did it is we paid the hospital paid for the treatment by us donating half of our eggs because I could not afford that. IVF is very, very expensive.
Okay.
So you donate half your eggs and they go to somebody. And I just thought, I said to my husband, you know what? Maybe ours hasn't worked, but maybe we have given the
Mm,
possibility to somebody who hasn't been able to, because they basically their eggs don't form. And so by giving your eggs,
yeah.
um, they then have that husband's sperm. So you're just giving your eggs, and then that's the way. So you just never know. In that journey, hopefully, we've been able to help other people. But
Mm,
I'm glad it's recognized more that people need support. But I still think it's a really difficult journey. And you and I, we're thankfully we have our babies around us, and there's so many people who haven't been able to conceive after loss. It's a
mhm.
really difficult journey, and I guess whatever your circumstances, no matter what your circumstances, we are all here for you, and
Mm,
and we're forever. All I can say is we're holding your hearts in ours,
yeah.
and you and I, as mothers, we understand how painful that journey is, but it's the father's journey as well. The
Mm,
fathers, they are the ones that, especially in our culture, they have to be really stoic. They have to be stoic, and they have to support the mother. They have to support both sets of families. They are not seen to be men if they cry,
yeah.
and so they have to hide that emotion. And you know, I don't know if you know this, but women externalize, men internalize. And so that entire internalization is isolating.
Hmm.
And that isolation is the equivalent to 5 cigarettes a day to your health by not speaking as women do. That's how bad it is. And
Yeah.
so,
Go on.
yeah,
I'm going to say I personally have done a lot of research into trauma and grief and how it affects our bodies because
it
I
does.
thought the same thing. I remember thinking, how can this not impact us physically? And when
Yeah,
we know how stress impacts us, and if it's prolonged over a period of time, what impact does that have to us physically as well
yeah,
as emotionally?
definitely. And so when I work with parents or when somebody within SANS will ask, do you have a parent who can get involved in, it's always the mother and the father. And for Ramadan this year, it was really beautiful because we had for the first time a blog post from a mother and a father. And that was really special, to
Hmm.
because their words and their views sometimes don't, because we give birth, they kind of to the, and so we have Sands United, which is our football teams, which is really lovely. And it's, through kicking a ball, and you don't even need to know how to play football, but through doing an act, it's really lovely because you're supporting one another. And we have Facebook pages that are specifically for fathers and we have support groups that are specifically for fathers. So it's really important to remember the many different losses and to be able to try and support all of them in whatever way you can. It's really, really important.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I do often say that I think it's the men, they get it harder than the rest of us because
Mm,
they don't have the physical element of going through what we've gone through, but they don't have nowhere near as much as what we know ourselves that the actual support, bereavement support for mothers is diabolical, really. So for fathers, it's almost non-existent, and like
yes.
you say, it's not something that is always perceived very well.
Mm,
Again, particular to certain cultures, but like I said, I know with my husband, his his thought process when it comes to counselling is that we don't do it.
mm, yeah. Yeah.
We don't
Mm,
access counselling. That
mm,
doesn't happen. Even when I was trying to access counselling, he still wasn't that
mm,
keen on it.
yeah.
And he would
Yeah.
never dream of it for himself.
Yeah.
You know,
Because they are my son. I remember I left my son for the first time when he was 7. I went to India just for 5 days. I left him, and the day I got back, he sat on the bed with me, and he was cushioned in my arm, and he was saying, "Mum, I really missed you. I really missed you." I said, "But I missed you too." And he said, Nima, his grandmother on my husband's side, asked, "Are you missing your mum?" And I said, "What did you say?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Did you cry?" And he said, "Mum, I did cry." But I said to her, "No, I didn't cry." And I said, "But why did you say no?" And he said, "Because boys aren't meant to cry." Oh my God, Louisa, I was shocked because we haven't taught him that.
mm,
So where do they get ingrained from? From
yeah.
school, society? And I just looked at him, I held his face and I said, "Beta, no,
Hmm.
you show your emotions." And I said, "Beta, you will be more of a boy, more of a man if you show your emotions. Your partner, your girlfriend, they will appreciate that. Show your emotions, don't hide them, because I know how detrimental that would be to him."
Hmm.
So
Yes.
my husband, every morning, he will go to, we have Vishaal's photo on the mantelpiece, and he will go and he will do his namaste, he will do a little prayer. But if I try and talk to him about it, he can't, he shuts off. And everyone has their own way of grieving. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. What's wrong is that if you're not enabled to grieve,
Yes.
that is wrong. But so I leave him to it. But I know his two things: that the day Vishaal was buried, um, he took me back to the crematorium, and on that little mound was all the flowers, but there was a slug. And I'd had a cesarean, and so I couldn't bend, I could hardly move. And he hates creepy crawlies, hates them. He makes me get the spiders, and he's 6'4", but he hates. And in that moment, he got a stick and he took the slug off there because he knew how much it was hurting me to see that. And I don't know if this makes sense, but in that moment, he showed me tooth and nail our Father's love, because he would never do that. And then every year he comes to the Wave of Light and he does his candle. And so men can grieve differently and they show it differently, but they do grieve.
Yeah.
They do. And we have a really lovely podcast webinar on our pages, actually on the South Asian support pages. And we had 6 fathers from different, with the South Asian community is broad. So we had Gujarati, Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, and my husband was one of the people. And they spoke about baby loss and how it is for them. And so whenever anyone says to me in a support group, my husband doesn't understand and he's grieving differently to me, because that's really hard, I say, watch this podcast, watch this, because it really explains a father, and theirs isn't just about grief, it's also about the many aspects of, he had to go and pick up that death and birth certificate, he had to go and sort it out afterwards, he had to keep everything going. So it's difficult,
Yeah, I think they've got a tougher job, especially if you've got somebody around you that wants to support you, then they give you the space to be able to grieve in peace. But in order to do that, that means they have to pick up the slack. So they don't have that peace. They lose their peace in order for you to gain yours. So I do think that's often overlooked. It's always about the mother rather than the father.
And I think if I say letting, that sounds like a really not the right word. Letting you do something is not what I mean. But they see what we're doing, and it's good. It's fine. And when I flatlined, and then I was on the Katie Piper show, and somebody told a friend of mine that, oh, Madhuri flatlined because of the work she does. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? But that's how minds think. That's how minds think. And in every culture, there is good and bad. And I love my culture. And we are it's such a colorful and beautiful and rich culture. And I'm so blessed to have the best of both worlds, because I was born in England. And so I have the best of both. But there are elements that are not right. And we have to change those elements. And so when he heard that, he said to my friend, tell that person they're wrong. And so it's those little things that mean a lot. And I think, I don't know about in your culture, your religion, but in ours, people turn to religion a lot. And I think religion definitely has a place in grief. But I think side by side, the religious homes and the religious leaders should be saying, if you need support, support is available, not just that it's just religion. So I think there's a lot of work to do. As long as you have the will and you have the right intention, and you're in an organization that has the right intention, or you're working on a silo, whatever the case is, if you have that intention, we will get there. We will.
I agree. I always say, like, work with integrity, and
Yes.
I refuse point blank to work with people who don't have integrity. That's
Yeah,
a commitment I made to myself a long time ago.
We have come across it. Sadly, we have come across it.
Yeah. But I do think generally in the heart, this sector, most people have got integrity, and we have the same vision and mission.
I always say to people that nobody would want to be in the baby loss community. Nobody. It's a group that you don't want to be part of. However, it is the most loving, giving, nurturing group. And I salute every parent, every advocate, every person who is trying within there. I salute each one of them because we're doing so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there is.
Yeah.
It's so sad because I've only been doing this now for a few years. It'll be 6 years this year since Zion passed away. But I've listened to some people that have been doing it for a long time, and unfortunately they're saying that they're still arguing or raising the same concerns.
Mm,
So it's sad that it's taken so long, but I do feel like there is a shift at the moment
mm,
with
mm,
the review and everything else. I'm
mm,
being really positive and hoping that we're going to actually really start to see some real tangible changes. Although we have seen changes from what I've heard, even in the time since I've lost my son, there's been changes. I mean,
mm.
um, even things like recognizing a miscarriage and
Yeah.
being able to get a certificate of loss, things like that. I had three miscarriages,
Mm,
and it
mm,
wasn't even acknowledged, let
mm,
alone
mm.
recognized.
Yeah.
So, but
Really.
there is
Mm,
still so much more to do, and I love how collaborative you are as well,
mm.
because I genuinely believe that we're stronger together, and we
Absolutely.
should be working together. I don't believe that we should be fighting against each other, but I do find that as we're talking about in inequalities, that spreads across every aspect. So it's not just how it affects mother or how it affects babies, how it affects people like me and you doing this work
Yeah.
in this sector, because there's only small spaces for us.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
and then you find people fighting over that space.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but it
Yeah.
shouldn't be like that. We should be all be working together. And I always say to people like, let's not play by the rules. Let's
Mm.
change the game.
Yeah,
Let's make up
absolutely.
our own rules because I've started to see it recently where they only allow us small spaces. So then people
Yeah.
are fighting over it, especially because there's more of us coming out to do stuff to
Mm.
make changes.
Yeah.
More organizations are
Yeah.
coming to light. So, but I don't play by the rules. I'm more than happy to share my space with
Yeah.
everybody.
And Jordan and I are the same. And in fact, we're just organising an event in London for parents from both communities, amplifying voices, which is on July. And it's going to be a place for any parent who has lost to come together again in that environment of understanding and support, just to be and just to be able to say your child's name and be with like-minded people and just have a day to honor them
Mm,
and just we'll have an activity there. But I think we need more of these spaces. So for Jordan and I, Jordan deals with, I'm outreach coordinator for South Asian communities. She is for African and Caribbean communities, and so that's really, really important to us. And just making sure that we listen to the parents' voice and everything we do. Last year we did something called Forever Tied in Love. So we have something, and it's going back to that sibling. We have something in our culture called Raki, and that's every year a sister ties on her brother's wrist
yeah.
a thread. Do you know it?
A couple of my friends are Hindu, but my nieces as well.
Okay, so it's such a beautiful tradition. So you tie that thread, which means it's a thread of love and protection. And in turn, your brother says, I will always honor this bond and I will always protect and love you. And so for the first year, we did this campaign Forever Tied in Love. And we had these by an organization, a friend of mine, Knit Your Socks Off. They made these rakis for us. And in there was two entwined hearts. And we sent two out.
Mm.
And one was for you to wear, for the sibling to wear, and one was for you to put wherever you choose, in your memory box, on a tree, on your teddy, whatever. Oh my God, Louisa. I asked her, can you make me 300? And thinking maybe 150, 200 will go, but let's have that buffer.
Mm.
In the end, we sent out more than 1,000 Rakis. And
Oh,
it wasn't to just South Asian communities, it was all communities.
yeah, because it's such a
And
beautiful idea.
And I think through things like this, yeah, one, it's a beautiful idea. We had wonderful feedback. We had wonderful photos of how much children got involved and
Mm.
appreciated it. But also, it's so important for us to learn from I feel by learning from cultures and traditions and different communities, you are so enriched. We can learn so much from one another
Mhm.
to make us, for me, it's wealth.
Mhm.
If I'm learning and taking it in, it's wealth. And it then, like, my son studies at Oxford University, how wonderful. But I've always said to him, before education has to be humanity, humility. That has to serve you before any education, before anything. And I thank God that he has taken that into account and he speaks that in everything he does. But I feel we as adults too, we should keep that in mind in everything we do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And it's you put it so beautifully actually, because it's yeah, it I don't understand why people don't do that. It really
Mm,
it doesn't sit well with me at all. It doesn't come naturally to
mm.
me. I'm that person. I'll be walking down the street and I see somebody. I have no idea who they are, but if I think they're in distress, I'm stopping to ask if they're okay and can I help. And I've made
Yeah.
lots of mistakes before thinking that someone needs help when they don't actually need help. But I will always ask anyway, because that
But you
one
know
time they
what?
might say yes.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe they don't need help. And maybe they're doing it just to get an extra buck. But your heart is so beautiful that you can't walk past. And I think that speaks volumes.
Oh, yeah, I can't. My husband's always telling me off.
Mine too. But my son does the same, and I never tell him off. So
Yeah,
it's all
I think
good.
it's beautiful. I just say, yeah, I genuinely believe. So when you talk about religion and things, after losing my son, I talk about this often. I always struggled with God and
Same here.
that. Yeah, I just think, you always hear those, well, it's God's plan or it's God's will or, he only takes the good and
That's
oh,
true.
those things are like the worst things you could hear at the time. I'm not so bad now, but I'm still like, mm. But I do
Yeah.
believe I am very spiritual. I can't deny that, even regardless of I can't deny that. So I genuinely believe what I put out into the universe will come back to me. And so if I put bad energy out there, that will come back to me. And I don't want to have bad energy. And I want other people to have good energy. I just want us people to live in harmony, which is, we need some conflict because we wouldn't I always say you need the bad to appreciate the good, but
Yeah. But not
just
this
want peace.
much.
Yeah, I just want peace. Like the way things are at the moment and
Awful.
how things are progressing. So when we talk about inequalities, in certain aspects, it's getting worse. We've gone backwards, especially in this country. I can't, we can't talk about the world because we'll be here all day. But in this country alone, I feel like it is going backwards a little bit, and people are just more likely or confident to voice their opinions more than they were before. I don't know, but so we need more people like you, is what I'm trying to say, and we need to do more work like what you're doing.
And one thing again that I've always taught my son, and I think this is, if we could all look at the world in this way. So our world is this big room full of windows, and whichever direction you look out at, whichever window you look out at, that is your religion, that is your belief. You and I are more spiritual, that is. But if we turn round, no matter what race, color, creed we are, when we turn round, we all spill the same blood.
Hmm.
It's the same color, it's the same blood. And for me, turning round and just for one moment forgetting that religion, color, everything, and looking at oneself and just seeing humanity, I think that's what the world needs to be.
Yeah. Yes, it's 100%. If we could just, everyone could just close their eyes for a minute and not judge people
Mm.
by how they look.
Look, yeah,
But yeah, because I
mm,
always say the same thing. We all bleed red, you know? So
absolutely.
they really need to,
Mm. Yeah,
people need to be treated
absolutely.
fairly. Like you say, when you think about the equalities and how many black and brown babies would still be alive, just based off the fact if they'd got the same treatment as their white counterparts. No special treatment,
No
just the
special.
same treatment. Like that speaks volumes.
Mm.
But people like us, we're determined and we are gonna change the world one
Yeah.
step at a time. But we are. So how if people want to get in contact with you through your foundation as well as Sands, please tell them how they can do that.
SANS now have a web page that is specific to African, Caribbean, and South Asian communities. So you just go in there, type it in the search, and that will give you all the many ways in which we support the support groups, webinars, everything, events, everything. Jordan and I both have SANS Insta pages where we share everything to do with our communities. I can share with you some
Yeah.
information
And
that
I'll put
helps.
it in like the blurb when I
Thank
release
you.
it.
And the same for the Vishaal Foundation, I will share. Yeah, we're always here to support in any way we can. And in fact, Jordan and I have just become hospital liaison volunteers because we have so many hospital liaison volunteers, but so few from our communities. And why?
Mm.
And so I think it's really incumbent on our communities to be more involved as well, and to stand up and become volunteers and become befrienders and become hospital liaison volunteers, because there is somebody in those hospitals or in those support groups
Mhm.
like me who felt very isolated and would really benefit for seeing somebody. And you get so much out of it. So again, if anyone is interested in doing something like that or collaborating or anything, yeah, just reach out. We're happy to get involved in any which way. As long as it's supporting, we're happy to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so please do, anyone that's listening, please do reach out because it's so important what you said, Madhuri, that we do see people like us in these situations. And if you've got lived experience and you've been through it yourself, you will know yourself how isolating it can be. And I mean, can imagine that you would have wanted somebody who looked like you to come along so you could be that person for somebody else. So please do reach out and get in contact because we do need more and more people that look like us to get involved because as we know, we're the ones that are impacted the most. So let's support each other and let's represent our communities.
Thank you. It's amazing. This was so amazing, Louisa. Thank you
Thank
once
you.
again.
I really appreciate you coming on today, and I really enjoyed listening to your story as well. It's heartbreaking, but it's so powerful. Oh, before you go,
Mhm.
if you, I ask people this, so with hindsight being your friend, if you could give either your past self or somebody else that's going through that right now, what advice would you give with the knowledge you have now?
Listen. Doesn't matter if it's your first child. It doesn't matter. Listen to your gut instinct and don't think, oh, they're sending me home, I'll go home. No, do not go home and say, I want to see somebody else. If something doesn't feel right, or if you feel like, oh, well, this is what they've told me, I better stop for a second and think. If I had stopped, if I had said, hold on a minute, why are you giving it to her and not me? But I didn't have that hindsight. But now, if there was one thing I could say, is it's about the rest of your life. And so just stop, pause, and say, hang on a minute. I am as good as that person,
Mhm.
and my baby deserves this. Stop and ask them those questions.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that. That's, yeah, I always say that. Trust your instincts.
Interesting, yeah. Well, you put it very eloquently. I went round the houses.
No, no, but anyone that's listening will get it. They'll understand and know exactly what you mean. I know. It's the same. I just listen to them and
Yeah,
so, but
mm,
never again.
yeah, never again.